Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your clients' peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. I'm Jamie Moore, founding partner of Moore and Kerbaway Counselors at Law, and I'm one of the co-hosts for the Legacy Leaders Podcast, and excited today to have with us Nick Hope, a friend and colleague, wealth advisor, and just going to have a good time talking to Nick this morning. So good morning, Nick.
Good morning, Jamie. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's all good, brother. So to get started, would you just tell us a little bit about your backstory? I know when we first got talking, I was fascinated by your journey to get to where you are now. So share a little bit of that with us, please.
Yeah, happy to. So I grew up in West Michigan for the majority of my life. That's where I was raised. After graduating high school, I decided that I wanted to leave West Michigan and explore some different parts of the country. So I moved to Tampa, Florida for college. I spent 4 years there and really enjoyed my time. It was a great opportunity to have different experiences, expand my perspective, be ingrained in different cultures. But I ultimately decided that I wanted to move back to Michigan. When I moved back to Michigan, I ended up moving back in 2001. And at that time, the job market was not very robust. We were at, the dot-com bubble had burst. There was huge accounting scandals with Enron and WorldCom and Arthur Andersen. And it was just a challenging environment for somebody that had a finance and economics degree in college to find a job. So I ended up, after months of interviewing, I ended up taking a position with an insurance firm in Lansing, Michigan, and ended up there for a number of years. During that time that I was there, I really focused on continuing to grow in my profession and in education and pursued my CFP designation. It was really fruitful for me to go through that because it was more in alignment with what I wanted to do professionally. And, as time went on, really started to identify with my entrepreneurial nature and foster my personal development and professional development to being a successful entrepreneur. In 2016, I co-founded Washington Avenue Advisors with my business partner. For the last 8 years, we've been focused on working with business owners and entrepreneurs to help them understand the value of their business, how they can increase the value of their business and monetize that so it translates to their personal life, and ultimately helping them clarify what their vision for their legacy is and putting a plan in place to help them get there.
Wow. Thank you. That was awesome. For many of you, perhaps may know, but perhaps you don't, the CFP, Certified Financial Planner designation for financial advisors and wealth managers, is probably the most difficult one to do. I've done some teaching of those courses, and it's almost like getting a master's degree in finance and economics. So I commend you for that, Nick. I've had advisors that start it and get into it and go, "Oh my God, what on earth was I thinking?" So
it's a commitment.
Yeah, it was. So I'm proud of you for that. Why financial advising and business owners with an economics and finance degree? You could have been a corporate guy. You could have done just about anything normal corporate track mate. So why financial advisor, wealth manager?
Yeah, well, like I said, the job market was difficult. I remember going to job interviews on 9/11. I remember having an interview with a financial firm on 9/11, which was just surreal at the time. And just thinking back, it's almost what is that? 2023, it'll be 23 years, in a couple of weeks. It seems just like yesterday, but the job market wasn't robust for, a 21-year-old coming out of college. So financial services was an area that was always hiring. And I ended up taking that role in that position. And it served me well because it allowed me to develop some skills that I needed to develop professionally and learn how to message, learn how to communicate, learn how to earn trust or gain trust in a quick manner. So there were lots of skills that I was able to work on, to polish, to improve. Ultimately, why I stayed in this path as an entrepreneur is because it allows me to express my creativity. I'm not a musician. I'm not an artist. I don't have those talents or skills, but being an entrepreneur allows me a canvas or an environment to think big, to really work on expanding my vision and think strategically on how I can make that happen. So it's an enjoyment thing. And I think the corporate world would stymie that creativity in me, and I don't think I would enjoy it.
Isn't it interesting that life often gives you choices that are kind of inadvertent, and then you look back and you go, "Ah, cool." One speaker I heard one time said that coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous.
Yeah.
So something happens and you take a left turn and you go, "Oh my gosh, I wouldn't have started here." The job market thing. I remember coming back from Vietnam to Kent County, where unemployment rate was 14%, and my skill set was combat infantry officer and jungle patrolling. There wasn't much call for that in Grand Rapids, so off to college and law school I go. But I get it. What a wonderful story. So your current firm was started. You have the two of you. You're the founding partner, having gotten bit by the entrepreneurial bug, which we all have, and then now where you are with your own firm. Had you known this other person? I know with my partner Richard, we've known each other 30 plus years from years ago as young prosecutors. And who would have thought, 25 years later, we'd start our own firm?
Yeah, Ruben, I did know. I knew for quite a while. The kind of a funny story is the firm that I started my career with. It's actually where I met my wife. So Ruben was a client of my wife when she was working at the firm. So he ended up at the time he ended up deciding that he wanted to sell his business. He owned a franchise company that he no longer wanted to continue to do day-to-day activities on. He just didn't have a passion for it anymore. So he decided to sell. And when he decided to sell, he really enjoyed the process that my wife took him through. And he's like, I can do this. And
Yeah.
really enjoyed that. And so he started working at the firm. And we worked at that firm for probably 10 years together. So I knew Ruben 10 years prior to us co-founding Washington Avenue Advisors and really launching into our business partnership.
Well, that's great that happened that way. One of the questions that we face all the time as estate planning and tax attorneys is people, when they finally find us, however that is, they come in with lots of misconceptions. There's a whole bunch of misinformation out there about what we do as estate planning tax attorneys, and especially in your industry. What the heck do I need an advisor for? And what exactly do you do? And so I find myself using that as a struggle to communicate what is it that we really do. So what would you say are some common misconceptions? I'm Joe Schmo, business owner guy, and I'm referred to you or whatever, and I come in with a certain little agenda. What are some things where you kind of shake your head, or I'm going to have some misconceptions? What would you say those are?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges in our industry is really anybody can hold themselves out as a financial advisor, whether you're an investment manager, whether you're an insurance agent or a financial planner. All of them can use that particular title, and it can be confusing to a consumer. And I think one of the, misconceptions is that we're all same and similar in what we can do and what we can offer. And that's not the case. There's fiduciaries out there. There's advisors that don't act in a fiduciary capacity. There's significant differences between the two. And there's a lack of consumer education. And that's partly the industry's fault. They're trying to professionalize. The CFP board, the Certified Financial Planning Board, has tried to do an excellent job of specializing the industry, and we've come a long way. When I started in the industry in 2001, and I think there was maybe one financial planning curriculum in college, and I think it was a school in Texas, but now a lot of the major universities have financial planning tracks or programs in school, very similar to accounting and tax work. But 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. So there's been a really good job of professionalizing the industry and creating a standard of professional conduct, which I think is making it easier for people to understand what the wealth managers do and what they can do. And then, as a society, there's just a lack of financial education.
You think?
Yeah, there's a lack of financial education, and part of that bleeds into people's misconceptions or misunderstandings of what a financial advisor can do, because they don't have a basic framework or understanding or knowledge what finance means, what dollars and cents means. And hopefully we start to see some of that. I know there's been some legislation at the state level to start adding that into the curriculum, K through 12 curriculum. But hopefully it's something that as a society we just put more awareness on from a
even in the secondary education thing, there's hardly any of that. I remember my young daughter as a sophomore and learning to manage a little bit of money, and we got her a checkbook and put 19 cents in there. And my wife was a retired banker, began to work with her on some of these principles, and she finally said, "You're going in your bedroom and you're going to balance this checkbook, or you can't go out. You can't go with your friends. You can't just go." So she's in there for a while. She comes out, slams that checkbook down and says, "There." So my wife looks at it, and sure enough, it balanced. Then she said, "Honey, I have one question." So what's that? What's this entry that says ESP, $42? She said, "An error someplace." Right. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. It's interesting. We did for a long time. One of the niche markets that we worked in was medical professionals, and we did a lot of workshops. We developed an educational curriculum that was in teaching hospitals. So for physicians that were going through their residency or their fellowship programs, we would conduct 150 to 200 workshops or dinners every year. And you have some of our most highly educated people in society, but none of them had any formal education or training around money, to the point to where they didn't understand the impact of having $250,000 to $500,000 of student loan debt once they graduated from their program. So it's really fascinating that as a society, we just haven't put any focus on it. I think the other misconception too, Jamie, is you have very well-known personalities that speak to the general masses. So somebody like Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman, they're very well known, and they have a lot of followers and, I guess, disciples of what they teach. And not that what they teach is wrong, but it's very generalized for the public. And when somebody comes in and meets with me or meets with another advisor, that plan that is developed should be personalized and individualized their own situation, not to the general public. And I think that's one of the misconceptions that people have, is it's like, well, my neighbor does this, or my coworker said I should do this, or I heard this from Susie Orman. And there's just misconceptions on there because they're correlating their own personal financial situation to the general public.
Boy, I get it. That's a common thing we see too. They come in and, well, I just need one of those will things, and I'm supposed to get a this or a that. Can you just crank out a this or that for me, like it's one size fits all? And to drill down and say, no, it's your family and your body and your money. And, oh, I get it. That's the joy for me, is the aha moment when it's my plan, not the plan.
Yeah.
And then now we're finally talking, right? What would you say? Actually, if I can shift gears a minute, Nick, I'm very excited. As I understand it, you've just been working your little patootie off for quite a while and have rolled out recently a new joint program we might be talking about to reach out to business owners. Now that we know that 10,000 people a day are turning 65. And last week, Wall Street Journal said that there's approximately $84 trillion is going to change hands in the next decade. Death, divorce, planning, not planning, but that money is going to move. And so we have to get prepared for that, what I kind of call the silver tsunami, if you will, in a non judgmental way, because I'm one. So tell us about this program that you rolled out. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, so we've worked really strategically and intentionally on building infrastructure internally that supports the needs of business owners and entrepreneurs. And one of the things that we've experienced or learned along the way in working with clients is most business owners have no clue what the value of their business is. They have no idea how that value translates to their personal plan when they're ready to be done or when they're ready to sell their business. And we've coined this project internally. We call it the Legacy Lab. And it's designed around helping business owners understand what they have, knowing that statistically speaking, 80 to 90% of their wealth is locked in their business. Most business owners bet on themselves.
Yep.
And they will continue to reinvest in their business. And at some point, that business needs to be transitioned, whether it's on death or they decide before then. And the business owners, a lot of business owners get really, their identity can become wrapped up in their business. And so what we work on is we work through the Legacy Lab project is, okay, what is your legacy? Why do you do what you do? What do you want to see happen? And how can we develop a plan to achieve those things? And a lot of it is around, let's understand what you currently have from a value perspective and find out, can it support, if you were to sell your business, can it support the goals and the dreams and aspirations that you have when you're done with the business? And if it doesn't, let's understand that now, because we can develop a game plan to help grow the value of that business or understand the factors or the drivers that impact value, and then correlate a strategy to ultimately transition that business, whether you want to transition it to your children, whether you want to sell it to a third party, whether you want to sell it to your employees or your management team, whatever it may be. Let's find out what's important to you and help you develop a plan so that you can actualize the legacy that you want to have.
Well, it's well said, Nick. Very well said. I know with our designations and working in the exit planning industry, two big misconceptions is it's a light switch. I'll get near the end, I'll just flip the puppy on and the magic business selling fairy will sprinkle dust on me and I'll walk out with a big check and blah, blah. And we know that doesn't happen without planning, even if it ever happens. I find the biggest misconception there is that exit, it's not a nasty little 4-letter word. I mean, exit planning is just good business planning. And when our owners understand that I can take my entrepreneurial skill that I used to build this sucker and apply it to maximizing and harvesting the value of it, it's, oh my gosh, so I should have started sooner instead of wait to the end. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in starting with the end game. Like, where do you want to end up? And if your dream as a business owner, father or mother, and you want to transition the business to your children and create a family company that goes multiple generations, you really need to understand that so that you can create the economic structure and the processes in place to where that can be done seamlessly. And if you're not thinking about it from an end game perspective, you're typically in the day-to-day aspects and you're not impacting the value. You're not having the impact on the value of the business that you can.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, at some point you are going to exit the business, whether you want to or not. There are reasons people sell businesses, and oftentimes it's not because they're in a good place. Oftentimes it can be because they're stressed out, because of health factors, because they've lost passion for the business. Those are all things that are kind of pushing you out of the business versus pulling you out of the business. And ultimately, we want business owners to be in a position to where when they're ready to leave the business, they're able to leave it on their own terms, not vice versa.
Yeah, my old joke is there may be 50 ways to leave your lover, but there are only 6 things you can do with your business. So
Yeah.
which one, Nick? I mean, that's the great question, is what and if and how, instead of I'll just wait till the end, or inadvertently. My law partner, Richard, at workshops or coffees or whatever with an owner, likes to ask them one simple question. And he said, if I ask you a question, Bob, would you answer it? Sure. Are you sure? Yeah, ask it. If you had died yesterday, what would be going on around here? It's like, oh my God, they don't know where the keys are. They don't know. Oh my. So it's that whole idea that we're not, the Seneca said, memento mori. Remember, you are mortal. And the sooner the planning begins, the better from my seat on the bus. So would you mind, how can we find you, Nick? What's the best way to find Washington Avenue Advisors? How do we get a hold of you?
Yeah. So like most companies, we have a website, waadvisors.com. You can always look me up or me on LinkedIn. My handle is Nicholas B. Pope at LinkedIn. Those are the best methods to reach out to me and connect. We will be starting a podcast. My business partner and I will be doing a podcast on the differences between early stage founders and traditional business owners, which will be launching here in 2025. It will likely be called the Business Smackdown. So it'll be a fun podcast. My business partner, Ruben, does have a podcast called Flying with Founders. You can Google that or go to the website flyingwithfounders.com. It's actually a really neat podcast where it's conducted in the plane. So he's asking business owners and entrepreneurs questions on their journey, and it's all done in a cockpit.
Love it.
Yeah.
So Whiskey Alpha, WA advisors.com, Nick Pope.
Yes.
Awesome. So as we wrap up here, Nick, kind of a mutual question for both of us heading into the adventure of the next decade or so. What would you say is the biggest challenge we might face when we come to an owner or a family as a planning team, three-legged stool kind of thing? What would you say our biggest challenge is going to be as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge in working as a team is communication. I mean, we're all humans, and communication is important in how we relate and how we have relationships. And the better communication that professional team of advisors have in together, and then with the business owner themselves, the better job that can be done for the business owner. Communication is always going to be the most difficult part because it involves humans. And that's what we want to make sure. That's the toughest thing. So that's what we want to make sure. And my role is that in working with the team, that the client is at the center, and then all the professional advisors with all of their experiences, all of their psychological views around money and wealth are all heard, listened, and then we collaboratively as a team put together a strategy that works in the best interest of the client.
I love that. It's well said. I know the analogy we use is a coach. A coach can't win the game, but a coach can sure lose the game. But the client, I've seen things mentioned where the advisor, whomever, whatever discipline, I'll be your quarterback. And no, the client is the quarterback. And then we act as the coach. And then if we do it right, I love Tom Landry's. What does a coach do? Well, a coach tells you things you don't want to hear, points out things you don't want to see, and makes you do stuff you don't want to do, but only if you agree that it's to make you a better player. So that's what I find is the challenge, is to get that foundational belief that we're here to coach you to make you the best owner you can be. And if we have that agreement, well, then we can get some pretty tough stuff discussed that maybe they've never talked about before.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Nick. It's been awesome. It's Nick Pope at Washington Avenue Advisors. I'm Jamie Moore, co-host today for our Legacy Leaders podcast. And come back often, and we'll see you soon.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.